All right. Hey, everyone. Welcome back to the next episode of the LearnIt Podcast. We are delighted to have Marc joining us today, a very, very inspirational individual in the education space. We're so excited to learn about you today, Marc. And
Thanks.
For all of our listeners, I know there's a lot of younger listeners too who are thinking about maybe becoming a teacher, maybe going into education. Yeah. So we'd love some insights for them as well.
Great
job. But let's start off how we always do. My favorite question always is going back to your childhood. I find every story very unique. Yes. And so I would love for you to take us back to your childhood. You know, how would you describe yourself as a child? How do you think that shaped you? How do your parents have described you, Marc?
So I'm a Francophone from Eastern Ontario, so I still speak French at home. Well, exclusively we speak French at home. I do teach in an English high school, by the way. I teach some immersion. And we're a Catholic French family, which we still are today, so that's a big part of my life as well. As a child, we grew up on a farm because both my parents were from Catholic backgrounds with 10 or 12 brothers and sisters, stereotypical kind of, maybe people don't know that's a thing, but in Canada, there was a lot of people, which, especially the Francophones, that would come from very, very large families, average 8, 9, 10 kids, and my mom and dad were both like that, so we grew up with a lot of family around. I took care of a farm. We had a family farm that we sold, but we still kept like a little hobby farm. And how would my parents describe me? Well, responsible and hardworking because I took care of that little mini farm. That was my job. It was about, I don't know, I can't remember, 30 chickens and 25 rabbits and a bunch of ducks and stuff.
You had a favorite animal, Marc? Favorite animal?
I don't know. I'll say the chicken.
The chicken?
Not because it was smart or anything. Just whatever. Yeah.
Nice. That's very inspirational. And if your parents, you grew up in a big family, at what point did you realize that you wanted to go into education? How did you know that was the path for you?
I like people, and I didn't think I think a lot of people when they're 18, 19 don't think they want to be a teacher.
Yeah.
And I was like that. But I'll be honest, when I got to university and I thought I wanted to be a doctor and I worked in a hospital for a little while, and then I realized I didn't really like being around sick people. And, and that sometimes that's hard because you make a decision and you don't really know anything about the job. It just looks cool. And I did have good marks. Probably could have made it, I suppose. But I much prefer working with young people because they're like a source of energy and inspiration. And a lot of what I do has been inspired by something I saw a student do, and I went in that direction. Okay. So I would encourage you very much to think about being a teacher. It's a fantastic job. And, and it's not just about the holidays, but those are really good. And the pension, of course.
Yeah. I think a lot of people that I've met, teachers that have gone into teaching somehow, maybe find themselves teaching in some way initially. And to your point, they don't know that they want to become teachers. Yeah. But it naturally just so happens when they teach, they're like, they really love it or they really enjoy it. And they're like, this is the career I want to pursue. Yeah. And then you see the impact you have on the kids and you're like, okay, you know what?
Yeah.
This is what I do it for.
And one thing that's interesting as a teacher, I started teaching history. I taught economics for 10 years. I taught civics, careers, geography.
Oh, wow.
And now I'm like the super tech teacher, which I do have the qualifications for. But there's often in your career as a teacher, you might be asked to do things you didn't think you would do. But sometimes try it. And hopefully you figure it out. I taught French, of course.
Yeah.
So, that is kind of a neat, lot of opportunity there, I guess.
Yeah. And you've, from what I've been reading about you, Marc, in your work in the technology space and teaching kids in STEM, you tend to follow a very hands-on approach, which is, it's not theoretical on the board, on the whiteboard. It's very hands-on. Let's build stuff. Let's figure it out.
Absolutely.
Let's break stuff and fix it. Can you tell us a little bit about that approach and how it came about? Because I think that's something a lot of teachers maybe want to also learn about is how do you integrate that effectively into your classes?
Well, I'll say something a lot of teachers don't do. I take risks that, sometimes I'll try something that I don't know how to do. I'll give you an example. So in the last 2 years, as part of our SHISM programs, we built 2 fully functional games as a part of one of our classes. And the games have like 20 levels. They're called Little Johnny Goes Home and Little Johnny Watermelon Smash. So if you go to Steam, you can download it. It's free. And in the description it says this was built by high school kids. So don't compare it to Elder Ring, obviously, or something like that. Because that was a team of 50 or 150 professionals that work for 3-4 years, while we did this in a semester, which we run after school, by the way, a lot. So we meet mostly after school because those 4-hour time blocks, I can get a lot, because the way game design works is once you're in the groove, you can go for 6 hours. So it's very inconvenient
to stop
after an hour, and you can do it. It's just not, I had a really great principal, Richard King, currently, and he supported us a lot with that. And so that's something that you need allies. People, superintendents have supported me in the past, like Eric Hardy and Sean Lehman. So those are important things, because without their support, I would not have been able to do this, because there's so many restrictions.
Moving pieces, right? You gotta make everyone happy, right?
Yeah. And I might be missing some key points in your question, but I'll say one thing that I do that a lot of people are afraid of, or teachers are afraid of. I have very good classroom management. I have very good respect for my students generally. So this allows me to do this because I have that. And they respect me from day one. They know, it's, that relationship is very important. But what we do is a co-learning approach. What co-learning means in the tech world is, I don't know how to do this necessarily. I'm the teacher, by the way, and so when we did Little Johnny Watermelon Smash, if you play the game, you'll see there's all these quote unquote somewhat advanced dynamics. How did they do that?
Yeah.
And so what would happen is we'd have a kid, at one point we'd like to make the bullet shoots there's sparks and stuff when we shoot. How do we do that? And we figured it out, know. And so we start with a base, I generally know how to do the basic thing. And then from there I expand on with my students. So that's kind of what co-learning is. And the other thing I always tell my students, don't be afraid to try something hard. Making a game was hard.
Yeah.
We succeeded twice, and I said next year, probably doing something else, because it was a lot of extra work. A lot of extra hours that, I know teachers do this all the time, but, it's kind of, I have a family too, so kind of, try to balance.
You gotta gotta make sure you're balancing everything that you do. And I want to talk a little bit about how to create an environment of respect with students and teachers. And the reason I ask is because there are some teachers that I know struggle with that. Yeah. And it's more like a battle with the students rather than a feeling that the students have that respect for the teacher. And I think, part of that might come from the student, part of that might come from the teacher. But do you have any tactical advice that you would share in order to, build that respectful environment and that co-learning environment that you're talking about?
I mean, it took me years. I was always kind of good with people. And, you go to teachers college, and if you're not good with people, they're not going to teach you that. So it's something you got to develop, and you got to make a priority. And you got to actually care, too, about students. I'll give you an example. I've started my class the same way for 25 years now. Nice. I call it the 3 R's. So the first 2-3 days, we don't talk about whatever it is I'm teaching, which is tech now. I don't even touch it for 2-3 days because we do some icebreakers. The first thing we do is we do a name tag. I get to know all their names. They have to tell me 2 things they like and something they would like to do in the future. Wow. I'll tell you, that's a very good activity because, frankly, from a logistics point of view, often 3-4 kids drop your class and 5-6 more join in that week. So, if you actually start on day one, it just doesn't work really well, the way often, busy semesters go. So for me, with the kids, day one is who that person is. And in the tech world, I emphasize it even more than I used to, because that human aspect is more important than anything we're going to learn. It's the technical stuff, great, fine. Okay, those are really cool things. AI is out there. But the truth is, technology is there to serve humans, not the other way around. Yeah. And so, that human connection is so critical. And often during my class, I'll have to stop. Okay, and I do this, by the way. If you ever teach in an environment with a lab, make them turn off their screens, make them lower their laptops. It's so important. If you always have the screen, there's a mesmerizing effect where they're just so
it's much more entertaining, right? And I think these days, I look at the teacher and say, we're competing with TikTok. That's that. We're competing for attention because the attention span has reduced so much that it's how do you create, make a classroom that's so engaging, do activities that are a bit different that engage students, to make them want to be there and not so necessarily have to be there, and they don't really, they look forward to it. They get excited for the classes too.
And, you got to be an honest assessment of yourself too. Like maybe you try something that didn't work. Okay, well, next semester, definitely try something else.
Yeah.
But and here's another thing, when something's working, even though you thought you were going to do this for 2 days, keep going, like 4 or 5, 8 days, whatever. I'm lucky because I teach in tech. That might be a little harder if I was a math teacher because they have so many things to cover. The tech curriculum is wide open.
Yeah.
The one thing I would say to tech teachers out there, and this is something that I think is really important that nobody's doing, is you have to focus on a little bit what's going on in the industry. And I know that's hard because it changes quickly. And like I teach ComTech currently. And in ComTech, what was really trendy when I started teaching it about 12, 13, 14 years ago was, we teach about photography and film. Okay, that's fine. And we still do that and I still teach it. But what about the other 18 disciplines that are out there, like music design, game design, art design, environment design, obviously graphic design, etc., visual effects, which I do now. We'll get into the tech tools that I use, but mostly Unreal Engine, which we can get to later.
Unreal Engine. Yeah, I saw that you're very involved in that space too, and helping other individuals also learn about how they can integrate that into their classroom.
Yeah, it's like I tell the tech teachers, it's like the shiniest toy in the room.
Yeah,
but it's actually relevant and industry standard.
Yeah, Unreal Engine is definitely.
There's up and coming tools that, and I focused on their tools because their philosophy is very, very good for teaching. Everything's free for education. And one of their new tools is called Unreal Engine for Fortnite.
Oh yeah,
which is very cool. And I have had students start building in this, and it's much easier. And they're way better at it than me because they grew up on Fortnite.
Yeah,
I don't play Fortnite,
and it's relatable for them.
I don't like. Right? This is one of my. I'm still doing it, and I don't play Fortnite. So there's a teacher out there that I'm going to do, but I don't know anything about Fortnite. I don't play Fortnite. I don't have time to play video games. Sorry. Yeah. I love them, and I still play them a bit. But since I started making them, I strangely no longer have as much. Yeah, I don't have as much.
Well, your class sounds like something even I would want to be in. It sounds like a lot of fun building games.
No, it's great. And the esports program, which is an up and coming thing, it's esports is basically like sports in a high school, but it caters to a different group of kids. So the kids who end up doing esports are usually not the kids on the basketball team or on the soccer team. And this is a compliment for my kids. I would call them nerds or geeks. So if I call you that, they're like happy. Oh, what's your call me a geek? Yeah. Yeah, because that's a compliment. Because you'll make 4 times more money than everybody else around here later. Yeah. Probably. You know, if you are
geeking out, enjoying your. Yeah. No, that's very, very incredible. And speaking of that sort of environment, do you think that there are certain challenges that govern our education system today? Because I know that things are changing a lot, and things have changed a lot, especially in the last year. There's a lot of teachers that are even thinking about what the next year will look like, the AI, the whole thing on AI. Yeah. But, from your perspective, what do you think are the biggest challenges that we face today in our system? So
I've been teaching 25 years. One thing that I've noticed, I would say, and this is maybe a bit controversial, but the over-bureaucratization of everything. If there's one area in the system that's grown massively in the last 25 years, it's the amount of people above me, the teacher. But strangely, I never see those people. And I'm not saying there's not some of them doing great work, by the way. Mm-hmm. But I remember a time where, as a classroom teacher, we would get together regularly at the school board. So let's pretend back then I was teaching history or economics. We would and we knew every other economic teacher in the school system because they took us out and we would all be there and I haven't seen that in 15 years. But the funny thing is, in those 15 years, there's like 5 times more people above me. So I would say one thing that would, and I've seen, because one benefit I've had that a lot of people maybe in my school board or in my region or even in Ontario have not been able to see is I've seen smaller school boards or almost no school boards, and a lot of the power is actually at the principal's level, which currently in the current system The principal is just another person that follows orders and has very little flexibility. And I'll tell you why it's important, because if you have people that, teachers, I believe, the ones who do it right, and it's a good chunk of them, by the way, they're professionals and they care about what they're doing. But whenever you have 18 people above you stopping you or controlling you, it really takes out the creativity from what you're doing. And I think that's why there's a lot less people entering education. And so a smaller bureaucracy, I would say much smaller, and grassroots leadership. And, you know, one of the things that's really great in Ontario is the SHISM programs. So the SHISM programs, for teachers like myself who are able to kind of be leaders, we get a lot of money, and I don't have to ask 18 people permission to do stuff.
Yeah.
So that's really been a very, very good example of maybe a fix in between, you know, between maybe
allows you to still be creative and do things outside of the classroom because you have the budget for it.
Yeah, absolutely. Without asking 18 people permission, and the answer is always going to end up being no.
Yeah.
For, you know, there's not that much money. And the other thing is the bureaucracy's grown, but the budgets from in school have shrunk to 10% of what they used to be.
Yeah.
Like 10% of what you would have gotten 15 years ago. There's no more money. That's maybe tough. It's just our school board. I don't know. I don't think so. I think it's a system-wide issue because there's more control, more people controlling it.
Yeah.
I don't know.
No, that's very... And so I'm curious to know, because would you ever consider going an administrative route, or do you think you'll be a teacher your whole life?
Not in the current system. I find they don't treat a lot of their administrators with the respect that they deserve. And if they were chosen to be probably leaders as opposed to, I would definitely do it. There's places that I've seen in Canada where I would go, but I don't really want to move. So I have my master's, I have all my admin papers. I'm one of those few people that's like, no, that does not look like a promotion. That looks like a demotion. You know, and by the way, I've seen some great administrators, and it is possible to make it work. It's just not for now. Yeah,
and that's, you know, I think a lot of teachers do say, like, you know, it really depends on what they're looking for at that point in their life, and if they want to, because as you go to administration, your whole, you know, everything changes around you. What you need to focus on, your priorities. You're a bit closer to the students as much as you're with the teacher. So you need to be able to give up some things and gain other things. So it depends on where you're at to be able to make those decisions too. Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, some of these poor administrators are so overworked. You know, 1,500 kids and 3 administrators. Like, that's a lot of hard work for those guys. Yeah, and then they got the board. Like, they got
and then they have to still follow
right? The parents are coming along.
And of course, they're giving them some good, you know, guidelines. And that's one thing the board helps them probably a lot. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And for those that don't know, Marc's, because of how incredible he has been as a teacher, he has also been awarded the Prime Minister's Teaching Excellence in STEM. Yeah. Can you tell us a little bit about that? How did that come about? What was the story behind that, and how have things changed since then? So I did it. I think I've been lucky, or blessed is the word I'd probably use, but you'll say lucky, and that's fine. I started doing the game design and nobody was doing it. And the thing is, there are more jobs in the game industry than there are in music, photography, and TV combined right now. Oh, wow. Yet in our ComTech curriculum, or even in our high school curriculum, we do not teach it. Like, hello. And I get it, 10 years ago, maybe it was just starting. But, and by the way, one thing I'll say is game design is not just making games. It's a lot of other things, virtual games or virtual simulations and training and cinema. So what happened is I got an Epic Mega Grant. I applied, and again, $34,000 helped a lot. I still have some of that money, and I've had it now for 6-7 years, and I manage the money very efficiently because it's all I got. And then so I published a VR game, and it got, we didn't actually publish it on Steam, but we showed it, and it was a lot of fun. And it was designed by kids where they would go around with a hockey stick and beat up a Pikachu. So it was a lot of fun. And then I got to participate in a virtual production course, I guess. And in this virtual production course, it was basically all the Hollywood people from across North America. They picked like the best people, And I was like the only teacher there. And
Oh, yeah?
in my course, there was the guy who worked on every Marvel movie when Marvel didn't suck. Sorry, and you know, all the Avengers. You know, up to the up to the
Endgame.
Endgame.
Well,
Yeah, and that guy was like the chief virtual VFX guy, and on my next to me on the other side, and the course was virtual. It was during COVID, by the way, but it didn't matter. The other guy had worked on Avatar, and he was the lead visual. And here I was like, what are you? I'm a high school teacher.
Yeah,
so it was
pretty damn good one, right? That's why.
Well, yeah, I suppose, but I am a pretty good teacher, but I was very humbled.
Yeah.
So what did I learn from that experience? I learned that even though you're excellent, you always have something else to learn.
Yeah.
And, you know, it's a good attitude to have and not be like, yeah, I'm the best, I'm this and that. And you might be very good, but I learned that it was very important to not project that attitude. You know, there's always something to learn. And I think kids also, you were talking about respect earlier. How do you get kids respect? Well, treat them like you would want to be treated. It's not really hard, but I've seen a lot of teachers struggle with that. So that's pretty important. Yeah. And I guess that helped me win the Prime Minister's Award. I met a lot of people, and then when I would meet other people, you know, they would be like, wow, I want to do what you're doing. And here's the thing. I've been doing the thing with Unreal for 7-8 years now, and still there's only a few people doing it.
Yeah. And it's this effort, right? It takes time and effort. And
what helped me a lot was the pandemic. We were stuck at home, so
you might as well, right?
Instead of Netflix all the time, I was learning Unreal Engine.
Wow. That's very inspirational.
Yeah. But it's not like one thing that I now offer. I have like a 1-week course I give to teachers, and I've done a lot of training with Unreal. So this is like covers almost all the bases, so you get the chance to try it out, and you can do, because the problem with Unreal is you could do an industry career in just one section of that tool and not have ever touched any of the others. Which is, so let's pretend I'm an environment artist. Well, I may not know how to do any programming, but it's such an accessible tool, because I can get, like I said, we published 2 games with a bunch of high school kids, and they did a lot of the code, and they're in high school. So because in case you don't know, normally it used to be you had to know C++. Well, you won't be programming anything till you're like done university. Yeah, start working. So the world has changed in that respect. Kids can do it right away with an industry standard tool. Okay. Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think a lot of teachers now are, at least the ones that I've been interacting with, like, especially when it comes to coding and software development, I think the one thing that's been very worrying for them is how much AI can be used in that facet to help students, like, whether it's completing assignments faster or whether it's doing other things. How have you dealt with that challenge in your classroom? So AI can be used to do coding, but I'll be honest, it's wrong a lot. So if you don't know how to do it, it won't help you really, okay? And including with, like, one of the things that Unreal does is I used to use another software tool called Construct 3, which is similar to Scratch. So all the grade 1 to 8 kids do Scratch. Okay. And what's the great thing about Scratch is it's block-based coding. But what's great about that is they learn how to think and how to use logic. And that's so important. I want this to happen and then this to happen. Yeah. Okay. Well, so they learn this. But then they get to high school and then they don't touch anything like that until maybe they do computer science. And I'll say there's computer science curriculum is good, but there's room for 1 unit using blueprints in Unreal. I'll tell you, it'll transform your class, and you'll end up doing way more than you thought. I can promise you, because the reason I'm giving that whole block-based story is Unreal Blueprints is like Scratch, but for adults. So it teaches them fundamental logic behind. Yeah, and there's a million YouTubers now, and I was probably one of the first, by the way, but I didn't really pursue this because I would probably have a lot of followers if I had, but, I'm a high school teacher. It's kind of already too busy with that. Yeah. But so that's the AI is fine. You can use it. And my advice to teachers is you should not avoid AI. You need to, how do I include this? The kids are going to use it to cheat if you're not including it, you are missing the boat. Yeah. It's another tool to leverage what you're doing. So when we built our songs and we custom built all our own music in our video games, which is something else we teach them. Yes, you could use AI to do that, for example, because maybe you don't want to waste time making music. I don't see it as a waste because I have a couple of kids who might want to do this because they love music, right? And so that kid's not maybe good at programming, but he's really good at music.
Yeah, and I think what worries me is like some of the teachers are moving backwards, so they're going back to pen and paper. Yeah. Instead of trying to find ways to innovate around AI or use it, they're saying, I don't like it, I'm going to go back to pen and paper coding and writing code because that's the only solution I can think of. So
yeah, that's really scary.
Yeah, so it's like, are we really moving forward? I
would encourage those teachers to try to, let's say they were going to make a game, like you were using an example of coding. How do I make that game? Let's do it with the AI. Let's see what's not working. Let's see how we solve that. You were mentioning problem solving. That's what we try to do in my class. We're solving real problems. Yeah. When we're making a real... And when I teach this in grade 9, 10, and 11, I don't do it that advanced. But they still get to do it. Like, my approach to the curriculum, and I call this the dessert platter approach. So, in other words, I don't know if you've ever gone to a function. It's like a wedding, and then there's like a little platter, and there's like 18 little chocolates or, cupcakes. And you just try one, and you taste it. Oh, that was good. Okay, that was your graphic design unit. It's like basically 2 weeks. I grab another one, music design unit. Oh, that wasn't too bad. Game design, things, video editing, video filming. Wow. So they get to try all these things. And instead of spending 4 or 5 weeks doing it, I do it in 2 weeks. Wow. And then in grade 10, and what I do in grade 11 and 12 is, by grade 12, they spend the whole year doing that one thing they love. So maybe that one kid wants to do music, the other one wants to do videos. They find that area, right? Because you get a flavor of each of them. And obviously, he's probably going to go to university or college to do that. Yeah. Right? As opposed to, they know what they want to do because they've done it. Exactly. No, and that's absolutely true. Like, I had a lot of kids who came to me and they're like, what's the point of learning how to do trigonometry? The kids always say, I'm never going to use this in my life. Or what's the point of learning this? And I tell the kids, I'm like, it's not that maybe you're never going to use trigonometry in your life. 99% of the time, you're not going to. But what you're learning is the ability to solve problems. Yes. And that's what people don't see. You're not learning, X plus Y. You're learning the problem-solving aspect quickly, how to think, how to logically put things together. That's the skill that you're developing, right? And that's used in any career that you go into. Yeah. And when I teach tech, the first thing I teach them is how to be organized, how to do file management. Because everybody tells me this, kids are so good with computers. No, they're not. They're not good at being organized, is what you're saying. Well, because it's all these skills like, A, being organized, paying attention, being responsible, and, being honest. Like, these are all things that, for me are more important than what I'm going to do. Because if kids don't have those core values, you need to keep working out on it with them. And before you go and start building this really fancy game or something, because if everybody's using AI to cheat or whatever, it won't work anyways, by the way. They won't be able to do what they're doing. Are you a teacher on your feet or are you sitting at the desk? Like, I don't sit at my desk very much or very often because I'm walking around and, if I see a kid struggling, I'll sit with that kid. And often my weakest students, they often struggle with this stuff. But I'll get them to a point where they can do a thing, Yeah. So, and it's about giving them that belief that, you help them a little bit to get from point A to point B, and then they can see, okay, you know what, I can do this, and they start to pick up on other things too. Yeah, well, identify where they're weak, and it's often some of those super core things. Yeah. If they can't read, well, that would be a real problem, but sometimes that does happen, even in the high school. So you try to find something to get them excited. Yeah, no, absolutely. That's incredible advice, and especially to all the teachers that are listening too. I know sometimes it's really difficult to deal with different types of students going through different types of challenges. But to your point, are you someone who's sitting at your desk, or are you someone who's going out and seeking solve those problems, and then really being in the hallways and talking to students and outside your classroom, welcoming them in? Right, those small things they make a big difference. Well, you touch it, like every time the first day of school, but often the first week, I stand outside the door and I say hi to every kid. And then I go stand at the end of the door and say bye to every kid. Wow. These are silly things,
but they make a big difference. Because I gone to different classrooms, right?
Yeah.
And I've noticed those things. And whenever a teacher does that, and I go and sit in the classroom, it's a very different class.
Yeah.
Versus if a teacher's always waiting inside and it's very lethargic and it's very, okay, let's get through this. The students tend to also don't want to be there. Well, but even just being...
They can read that. If the teacher doesn't want to be there, the kids probably don't want to be there.
And the teachers dictate the energy in the room. Absolutely. And that's so important, right? Absolutely. All right. Well, we're going to go into a rapid fire round. My favorite part. So what we do here is we'll ask you a couple of quick questions. We'll keep our responses short, quick, to the point. There'll be a couple of questions here. So to start off with, what is one book that you recommend every teacher or young person to read today?
Okay, so this will be probably controversial, but I'm Catholic, and I would tell you to read the Bible and to read the Catholic version. But I'm a prolific reader, and I love reading science fiction as well. And, when I was 15, I'd probably read a book a week, really. But having read, thousands of books, by far it's the most interesting book you will read. But you may want to have help reading it is my only suggestion.
Yeah, wow. That's a very, very interesting piece of... I've never heard that before, so definitely...
Yeah, well, I know it's not that trendy, by the way, so...
But it's not as been around so long, right?
It might have been around for so long for a reason.
Yeah, oh, that's a good point. There you go. What's your favorite piece of technology in the classroom?
I'll say the tool Unreal Engine is my favorite tool because it allows me to iterate, it allows me to create, it allows me to make films, it allows me to make video games. It allows me to make art. It allows me to do a lot of really cool things that I never thought I would be able to do in a classroom. Wow.
So everyone, action for all teachers, potential teachers. Check out Unreal Engine. Give it a shot.
Well, you could use it in an English class probably to make a story. I'm working with a fella from Victoria probably in the fall. He has a book series called Waking Alice or something like that.
Okay.
I apologize for I don't remember. I just started working with him and we're thinking of doing something.
But there's applications everywhere,
yeah,
right? It's not just technology. It's not just
game design. Well, no, that's it. Everything. It could be like one of the first lessons I do with my kids is a physics lesson. Where so they go in and the balls drop or the balls float away. Yeah. But that's the whole point. It's a video game fun thing, right? Yeah. But it actually responds to real world math. Not that I'm doing it, by the way. But,
but it does that.
A physics teacher can do it or something.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. What is one thing or two things that you love doing outside of work?
Well, most important for me, I'm a dad. And I'm a father, so I want to do that well. So those are maybe like things that I take seriously, that I think should be taken seriously. What do I do for fun? I don't know. I'm kind of so busy all the time that I travel. I like traveling a lot. I've taken, at least 20 groups of students to Europe in the last, 25 years. So I've traveled a lot too. So that's something I do for fun.
Do you think... being a dad has changed you as a teacher? Do you think it made a difference?
For sure, absolutely. And the way you treat your own kids versus students, this is something I would tell young teachers. Sometimes young teachers try to be everybody's best friend, but you're their teacher, not their friend. Okay? And it's okay to be their friend-ish too. Well, I'll be honest, I'm stuck with students in my classroom 99% of the time. And, so it's important that there's a line there, and you need to respect that. You need to build that. You're the one that's in charge. And kids will try to drag you, into their things, and that's okay too, but you're the teacher, not their friend. Yeah. And make sure they respect you, not necessarily just, love you or something. Sometimes people want to be loved. Well, you know what? That's nice, but do they respect you? And if they don't, you probably need to, recalibrate that.
Stiffen up, yeah.
Yeah, without being, I'm not a harsh person by any means. I'm very soft and kind approach.
But that doesn't mean that you need to be hard, right? Respect is earned in other ways, to your point.
Yeah, right? And if somebody's constantly, it could be your lessons too, and sometimes it's very difficult because if you're always being switched around and you're not always teaching the same classes, it's very difficult to build because this is something else that I think is important. Content matters. Like it's very trendy in the ministry. Oh, it doesn't matter what you're teaching them. Yes, it does.
Yeah.
It matters. Okay, like what are you teaching them? I could teach them how to do video game stuff from 1950. That's useless.
Yeah.
Well, not necessarily useless, but you
But
get
today,
the idea.
yeah, in
They
today's world,
do a
right?
bit of it, but
Yeah.
make sure your content is relevant.
Absolutely. And that's why it's so important to you, what you're saying earlier is keeping up with it. Like, it might be challenging, but finding small and simple ways to just stay in touch with what you're teaching, right? So you have that knowledge to say, okay, what do the kids need today?
Yeah.
But it's very different than what they needed 10 years ago,
Yeah.
too.
It was a student who introduced me to Unreal Engine. That's why, it was a student who introduced us to YouTube, me and one of my colleagues from another school board.
Wow.
When YouTube wasn't owned by Google. And we're like, this is amazing. This is the most amazing tool.
Yeah.
And then it got bought by Google, which a lot of people don't know.
Yeah.
It was like,
Big
it's changed everything. YouTube is...
Accessibility, right?
Yeah.
Resources, knowledge on the web.
Absolutely.
And what would you say is your most either memorable or favorite student project that you've worked on?
So I thought about this. I'll pick this one. I remember I had a student, this was probably 6 years ago, who was autistic and was terrible in almost all his classes, but he loved my class. And what he did is, and this is when I was just starting to use Unreal Engine, he designed his own system shock level, and he learned how to use Maya, and I was teaching him Maya a bit too. But I would always teach him this, and he took it up here.
Wow.
And he ended up going into game design school. And I tried to reach out a few times, but because he's not very, autistic type, he's stereotypical, whatever that means, where he's not like, he's doing it. He went to Vancouver Film School, he graduated, did great. And I'm pretty sure, I hope he's in the industry, but I've tried to reach out and he's never, he got back to me once and I'm doing great. That was the last time I talked to him. But so that was a very memorable project because it looked like basically a game from, 2001 or something done in, I don't know what it was, 2015 or something.
Oh, wow.
Very cool.
Okay. Can I ask you, do you sometimes feel like you get really attached to students and then they graduate? Does it hurt you sometimes?
Of course, that's the hardest part.
Right?
It's very hard because they never come. They come back, but when they come back, they realize everything's changed, so they tend to not keep coming back.
Yeah.
Because they go back, and it's hard for them too. Because when you go back to your school, it's like everybody you knew is gone, and it's a very difficult experience.
You just come to visit, and
yeah. Well, they love seeing their teachers, and I've had a lot of students come back to see me. So
yeah, I always make it a point if I'm home because I grew up in Uganda, so every time I'm back there,
cool.
One of my first things that I do is I go to my school.
Yeah.
I see all my teachers. I take them for lunch. I say,
wow.
we eat lunch.
Because, you're definitely
I think as kids, as younger individuals, we underestimate how much we learn, or we undervalue it in the moment.
Yeah.
And because I was blessed to again teach, it gave me a different perspective towards my teachers.
Yeah.
But those that never teach, and of course 90% of people will not teach or go into education, so they might not necessarily have that same perception. But I have always felt like what the teachers have done for me in my life has always gone undervalued, and it's like sort of like we were there for that period of time and we get all the knowledge and then we just disappear from life, right? So
no, it's the hardest part of the job.
Yeah, so if a student's watching this, make sure to a reminder for you to go back to your old teachers and just say hi.
I have some of them on Facebook and they'll like, yeah, that's awesome, or support.
They'll support.
But their lives go on, and that's a good thing, and it's wish them all the luck. If we did a good job, they're probably focusing on the right things.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah.
And let me throw in another question here. If it wasn't for teaching, what do you think you'd be doing today?
Well, I always used to joke to my students I would probably go in a stock market because I was really good at it.
Oh, wow.
And I used to make a lot of money, and I don't do it anymore because I'm too busy with. And I would do that and retire at 30 and then go into teaching. Although having said that, I'm sure it's not always a winning game, but I do have some of my former students making 10 times what I make now, and so don't forget to buy me lunch or something, guys.
Yeah, don't forget your teachers.
Yeah.
And last one on the rapid fire: if you could describe your teaching style in one word, what would that be?
I wrote this one down because I had to think about this. Dynamic.
Dynamic.
Always evolving. It's not static. And it evolves, in a lot of ways with humility. Don't be like, I know everything. You never will. And if you think you do, you have a problem.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Well, you don't need to be sorry, because I think being dynamic is one of the most important things a teacher can do for their students too, right?
Yeah.
All right. And just to close off our last question here, what's one piece of advice that you would share with either people who are thinking to go into teaching, people who are already teachers, something that has changed your perspective or really influenced you in your life? What's something you'd like to share with everybody?
Well, I think what you teach is important, but I think your character and your values and who you are as a person are more important. And that's going to get more kids interested in you. And maybe that sounds like gobbledygook to some of you, but I can tell you it's not in my experience. And, integrity, honesty. Like, it's funny because I talk to kids, I said, be honest. Like that. This is like the first 2-3 days of school. We talk about the kids are all like stunned. You can cheat, you can get away with it. Maybe I won't even know. But eventually that'll catch up to you, whether you think it will or not. But let's pretend you're in a relationship with your girlfriend or something.
Yeah.
You're lying to her all the time, and you're cheating on her. What kind of person does that make you?
Yeah.
Maybe you're getting something out of it, because you're doing whatever you feel is great. But what a shame that is, I think. You haven't really understood things, and so that is more important than, being a really great game designer is awesome, but if you don't have that, I think it's the basis for the next thing.
It's a foundation.
Yeah, because then you work with partners or colleagues, and people respect you, and they're gonna, you'll become better, and you'll, and that's very important at the core of being a good teacher is being a good person with good character.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, that's a great note to end off on, Marc. Thank you so much for being here with us
today. Thanks a lot, man.
Hope all the listeners enjoyed today's episode. There was a lot of really good nuggets, both for young people, for students, for teachers. So thank you so much, Marc, for your time. This was awesome.
Yeah, thanks for coming out. Appreciate it.
Thanks.